On.
Live streaming is on.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the final session for today on GlobalCon4. I'm Nick Bertoli, and I'm here with three awesome people, and we're going to just have a big roundtable discussion over just in general this year. What's come out, what we think is going to happen in the future, how the current situation has affected us and our customers, and just kind of see where it takes us. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, but we're just going to jump right into it. So I want to let everyone introduce themselves, starting with Christian Buckley.
Yeah, Christian Buckley. So 9-time Microsoft MVP, Office Apps and Services, and Microsoft Regional Director based in Salt Lake City. And Maarten.
Yes. Maarten Visser here from the Netherlands. Being a business consultant for 20 years in SharePoint collaboration and building business applications. And looking forward to this great conversation.
Ben.
All right. And I am Ben Stedjink, and I have been doing SharePoint modern workplace type consulting for, 14, 15 years now, down in Jacksonville, Florida. MCT, have a podcast, Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, because I like to promote my podcast. Yeah, there's a sticker on Nick's laptop, right? I'm pointing at it.
There you go.
Zoom. There.
There we
Perfect.
go.
Awesome. So we're just going to kind of see where this conversation takes us. First couple minutes might be rough. Just bear with us for a while, and we'll see how it goes. I wanted to start by talking about, because of all of the things going on, remote work has been a huge deal this year, and technology has made a lot of leaps. I think everyone would agree that we're kind of forced to do so. And I wanted to ask everyone what some of the bigger ones that you've seen this year, not necessarily that have come out, but maybe that have been announced along the way. Personally, I'm very into Power Virtual Agents. That's not necessarily directly related to remote work, but it's super cool. There's going to be a session, I think, tomorrow that I did about it. Self-promotion along the way. But that's one of my favorite things that has been kind of gaining momentum along the way. We can talk about that later.
I'm just saying, just on that topic really quick. So a lot of people talk about Power Platform and what's going on. And I always like to ask that question. Well, can you tell us about Power Virtual Agents? And almost uniformly, people say, I've not really dug in. I don't know a lot about that. So that is a great session as part of the Power Platform that I think people need to get informed on, and MVPs need to get informed on. So.
Yep. Yeah, again, session tomorrow is an intro and tells about the different scenarios and whatnot. But we'll talk about more specific topics a little bit later. What kind of cool things have you seen announced or gaining momentum this year, Christian?
Well, I mean, it's the List app is a big deal. The kind of the big news makers that are out there. Of course, there's been a lot of talk for the last year and a half around what's happening with what is now the SharePoint syntax. Having more output from that team, there's just a lot of cross workload integration. So Outlook integration into Teams and Yammer, and just a lot of that kind of capability that I've been really excited about. Some of the things that I personally get excited about are not so much the big major product announcements, but are those incremental adds and improvements. Especially like that example of emails being shared across the various workloads, pushing content more of an integration between the Office suite, of course, is very cool. So there's just tons of little things, and as you guys know, I talk a lot about productivity tips, and so there's so much that's coming out, which is just a slight extension of what's been around for a few years, but an improvement on that. So it's every week there seems to be something new that's coming out to get excited about.
What about you, Maarten?
Well, the biggest one for me this year is, especially the last 6 months, is Teams as a platform. So the component, which is now called, of course, the product formerly known as Project Oakdale, formerly known as another name we're not allowed to name, Dataverse, is for the last 2 months is really having impact on what we're doing in building business applications in the context of Teams. And the interesting part of it is the way that I now currently look at it as licensed solution architecture, where we're really looking into what can we do with the seeded licenses from Microsoft Teams and the licenses you get for Power Apps and Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents out of the box with Teams. And now that we have the ability to use the Azure API Management API, there's a new building block to do very cool things, basically as a step up towards really adopting and embracing the Power Platform as a whole. Teams as a platform, that's my biggest.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to come back to that one. That's a big one. Ben?
So Slack. Slack getting acquired by Salesforce. Is this the right conference to talk about that? No.
Maybe a little bit, but
one of the things that I've really liked, so I struggle, and I still struggle with how to manage tasks and to-dos and all of that across the platform with all the different ways to do it. Kind of diving into the Teams as a platform, like Maarten said, one of the things that I have been excited to see is how they're actually finally starting to at least pull some of these together with Outlook tasks going into to-do, with the Planner app that will eventually become the Tasks app in Team, and really starting to get a little bit more of that central, the central pane or that central look into all of those different tasks and different places that they're coming from. I would love to see a lot more work around that, but that's been one for me. And the other thing that is, I don't know that it's been a big one, but it's been fascinating, is to see all of a sudden how fast the development on Teams has gone over the last 6 months. I feel like Microsoft took a bunch of resources from some of the other services and shifted them all to Teams to really enable a lot of the work from home, and taking advantage of this scenario as much as it hasn't been a great 6 months or so. Some of the good things that have come out of it are the ability or the advantage Microsoft has taken of the situation to really learn and improve Teams. That's what I feel like over the last 6 months or so.
Awesome. I think this is probably a good jumping off point. A lot of us have said, a lot of these integrations are revolving around Teams, and I don't necessarily want to make this a Teams only discussion, but a lot of these pieces are central to all of this remote work. Just streamlining these general processes, task management, like you managed earlier. I've had clients asking me about that stuff for like a decade. They use those old SharePoint task lists poorly, and then a bunch of other things have come out. Now you're starting to see more unified experience between those. Same thing with Dataverse. CDS, I think, has seen, from my experience, this may be different for you Dynamics people, but from my SharePoint perspective, CDS has not seen a lot of adoption with my customers, because one, you either have to have the licenses for it or they don't quite understand it. And what they're doing with Dataverse, bringing that experience in, I think is going to drive adoption and allow for better solutions to be built.
Yeah, I'm seeing a question regarding if Dataverse would replace SQL Server. And of course, it won't, but it will bring the ability to build relational databases to a much larger audience. So basically, of course, Dataverse is also the database for non-DBAs, right? So if you don't have to be a database administrator to build those databases, and you can actually are allowed to do many-to-many relationships and stuff that feel great if you're quickly building apps. But basically, it's the citizen developer approach for building databases, plus a lot more. I think it's one of the most underestimated platforms, CDS, now called Dataverse, in what it actually can do, and the amount of Azure components which are underneath it to do integration and triggers and workflows and blob storage, and there's so much underneath. That could be a whole session just to discuss all these things. So we'll keep it brief.
Yeah, there was a great session on that yesterday too, in this conference.
Perfect.
I like kind of going with that question. I like where they kind of positioned it is I saw a lot of people using SharePoint lists as relational databases, because your option really was a SharePoint list on this side or a SQL database or some other database on this side. I feel like Dataverse kind of fits right in the middle there. It's you can still do a SharePoint list. SharePoint lists don't make great relational databases. You can use CDS without having to invest in some of those premium connectors or the expense of SQL or Azure SQL to build some apps that really do require a lot more of those relational database type capabilities. And then maybe once you outgrow CDS, because there are some limits on that you could then, in theory, go to SQL from there.
Yep. Okay. What are your thoughts? Any different thoughts there, Christian? No. Yeah, pretty. I think we're all on the same page with this. I've been wanting this forever. I've got somebody on my team who is a Dynamics / that Power Platform kind of developer person who's been bugging me to get more projects around this for a year. I'm like, well, they're not adopting it, but I think that's going to change. There's so many capabilities that the average person will be able to use now.
Yep.
So one thing, kind of going with the whole work from home, to try to not make this entirely products, what is one tip that you guys have found working from home? Like, I know a lot of you, Christian, Nick, I know myself, I'm not sure about you, Maarten. Personally, I've worked from home for like 12 years, but there's a lot of people over the last 6 months that are new to working from home and still trying to figure it out. Do you guys have tips or even anything that you've done differently over the last 6 months? Or how have you guys kind of seen that change, or different hints or tips for people that this may be a lot newer to than some of us?
Yeah, that's been like you. I mean, it's been over a decade that I've been working remotely. So we were joking about, folks, before we started broadcasting here, of how hectic this month is. Traditionally, over the last my career, almost 30 years, December is a quiet month. I'm not in sales. I'm not trying to close out the end year that way. And so generally I'm able to kind of get a bunch of work done, work on some deliverables, get things done. But it's just crazy now. And it's because everybody else is home too. So everybody's got to work on that same schedule. One of the things that I've realized, because it has gotten more hectic, and for those of us especially that work within the modern workplace space, this ecosystem around Microsoft 365, that there's businesses booming in a lot of sectors. There's a lot to do. It's become even more important to go in to schedule your time wisely and take breaks from working. And I was just telling somebody this morning how thankful I am to have a dog and have to, he will come down and insist that I take him on walks 5, 6, 7 times a day. And it gives me that mental break. I've got one of these Fruity watches, and it does if those that have them know, it prompts to stand up throughout the day or to breathe. And I've started paying attention to that and doing it. And it's one of those it's just annoying, dumb little app thing that just I can't. How do I turn that off? And into now saying, you know what, I need to pay attention to that kind of stuff. So it's not so much the things that I've changed have not so much been around the technology. I have certainly other thoughts around what's changing. We can get into some of those, but it's really being intentional on the division of work and life and balancing that. And you need to set hours and say work is done today. There will always be work for tomorrow. Obviously, there's a deliverable, there's some project, and you're cramming more time, spending more time. But it's kind of like if you've ever had one of those managers, one of those bosses where you give them 12 hours in a day and they'll expect 12 hours in a day. That's how working from home is. It'll take whatever you give. You need to be productive in the time that you're working and stop working at some point.
Yeah. Scoping. Yeah. That's scoping your work day. Yeah. That's much more required. And the thing that I would mention is I've also been working from home for many years, during different periods in my career. But the key thing that I would say as an advice to the viewers is spend a bit of money on improving your workplace. So the guys, even my workplace was pretty good 9 months ago. I did improve it over the last couple of months because it was so intensive, and it's really every day that I'm doing it.
Well, look at those floor to ceiling windows behind you.
Yeah, exactly.
You need a good view. You need a good view. Yeah. Look outside. You don't get all that. You need to get the direct light on your face. Otherwise, especially this is going to be a very depressing winter. So fill your life with lights, right? So have them everywhere around you. Get those vitamin Ds, even if they're artificial. It really helps. And
or you just move to Florida.
That's that would be much easier. So there I'm jealous. Here's just simply dark and gray. But the other thing is, like I have some coworkers which have problems with their necks at this moment. So be very careful on the way that you sit in your chair.
Yes.
Have your back straight. Chair. These things really make a difference.
Yeah, speaking of which, but if you can afford it, buy the nicest chair you can afford. My chair is worth more than my car because I spend a lot more time in my chair than I do in my car. Not that I have a good car, I have a terrible car. But
I was going to say, or you drive a really terrible car, Nick.
my car is 13 years old. It's worth maybe $100, but still, I have priorities.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like 10 years ago, I convinced myself to pay a lot of money for a car because I was sitting more in a car than sitting on my couch at home.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's the other way around. Now you need a good workroom.
And speaking of that, I think this is one of my tips too, is you see a lot of people talking about now it's easy to work 24 hours a day. It's easy to work 12 hours a day. Some people may have, or it's that separating work life. One thing I have for me, I'm fortunate enough, I have a dedicated room in our house. That's my office. I've been doing this long enough. I'm like, the room has to be my office. Even if you don't have a room, have a dedicated work spot. Don't work from the couch one day and work from the table the next day and work from your bed the next day. Because that you tend to integrate work and life a lot more. Have a work spot. When you sit at that work spot, you're working. When you're done working, get up, walk away from it, and don't have that work moving around with you, or don't have those different spots and work from different spots every day. But yeah, have that dedicated space where you get your work done that you can walk away from.
Yep, I agree. It's funny. It was a gradual process for me. I remember 10 years ago, every now and then on social media, I see this post coming up that says, I'll never be able to work from home. And that was about a year before I started doing that, and I will never go back. But it did take a lot of work to go from, all right, I get up at this time and I spend 20 minutes driving and then I'm here till then and I come back. And then that job ended up working me 80 hours a week anyway. So it's like, well, what's the point? But you just get used to it over time. You need to find a quiet place, like you said, a dedicated quiet place preferably. And it just comes with time. There's going to be frustrations along the way for sure.
Andrea, kind of on this note, to segue over, she asks a great question. She says, how many small to medium-sized businesses do you think will default to remote working even after COVID? And what about all the commercial real estate? I make that comment all the time. Like there have been so many. In fact, this was just news last night, that Hewlett-Packard famously built, this company was started in a garage in Palo Alto, California. They are one of the beginnings of Silicon Valley. They're leaving California. Headquarters is moving to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. Now, arguably, so I worked as a consultant for a year with HP, working out of their Palo Alto offices back in 2004. Even back then, they were a very collaboration-focused, remote working, supportive company. We're already looking at that. In fact, I told a story how on my last week of consulting, wrapping up that contract, I had a friend of mine who said, hey, I just realized that my best friend in high school is working for Hewlett-Packard. Can you look him up and see where he is? I look him up in the directory. And I had been working as a consultant in this cubicle that they gave me. He was literally over the wall. And in 1 year, I never ran into him. So I contact him, and I found that he reported to a team in Southern California, but lived in Denver. And I think that's just the reality, is that you now have so that's the HP story, that they're increasingly you have companies that are realizing that we can go find the best employees for our needs in these roles. Don't have to force them to be in one geography to make it work. More and more companies are realizing, I think because of this forced shift to the work from home environment, they've said, hey, we could actually do this and we could be productive. Like, we can make some changements. There are some adjustments, but there are some roles that can be part of the time or all the time can be work from home. Microsoft made that adjustment where they've now said, we realize now fighting that battle. And for those that have never worked for a large company like Microsoft, when I was an employee there was kind of a joke that of the tens of thousands of employees, there's always 5 to 10% of employees that within the Puget Sound, within the Seattle area, who are always working from home while stuff was being moved, that there was only enough office space for 95% of employees. So 5% was always in movement, waiting to displace somebody else who would then wait to displace somebody else. That was a kind of a joke. But now they're realizing that we're spending all this time and all of this money on corporate real estate when you have people, I don't want to name names and put anybody Microsoft employees out there, but who recognize, even before this crisis, we're like, look, I only go into the office once, maybe twice a week for a couple meetings, and the rest of the time they work from home.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you're going to see a lot of that. I'm curious to see out of this if once everybody starts going back out again, if you actually see like an increase in co-working spaces or even offices that offer a co-working space within what used to be various cubicles or offices for employees to come into, where a lot of these companies still maintain maybe a smaller footprint of corporate offices because, like you said, there still is something to be said for in-person meetings, for getting together, being able to whiteboard, times where, frankly, you just need to get away. Even working from home for 10 years, I would try to get out a day a week or so just to not get stuck in my house. But kind of that increase of more shared office spaces, whether it's a corporate shared office space or a co-work type space that kind of comes out of all of this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, of course, the kind of work that you're doing makes a difference. And if you're an information worker, like most of us, the fact is we don't really need it. And we are experienced doing co-working and team meetings in an online Teams meeting. But surely meeting with customers, being in an actual room still has benefits. So we should do that as much as we can and do that. But I've read research that at least like if you're working in a team, that it's preferable that you could see each other in a real environment, like twice a week. That there are benefits of really meeting up and look each other in the eye, not through a camera, would have benefits in the social part of that. So there might be minimums, but it differs per person and it differs per job.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting your vitamin D, right? Look, like we did this. So earlier this fall, I went and did the in-person. We did an event in Branson, Missouri, and it was the North American Collab Summit. And it was maybe a fourth of the attendees in person, and we did a hybrid event, and which was there are pros and cons to doing something like that. But I think overwhelmingly the feedback was for people that is like, I need to have some level of human interaction, even if we were safely social distancing, except as people pointed out when we went bowling for the
or when we went and had dinner and we all had to take our masks off.
Ignore that. So in the conference itself, I mean, we were being safe, but even being 10, 15 feet away from the speaker and having that interaction, that back and forth, and seeing other people and having those conversations while wearing masks. I mean, there's something about the human connection. You're never going to get rid of that. There needs to be some degree of that. You can't You can't be an island. I can't. I got to get out of my basement sometimes.
Yeah, that's one thing that I miss the most is the in-person events. And like you said, they kind of still exist, but not in the same way. You don't get as many opportunities, especially like if you've always worked from home. You don't get a whole lot of opportunities to interact with your peers, which is what I would consider people within the community, more so like clients, right? You don't necessarily consider your clients your peers. I miss that for sure, and I don't think there's not a great virtual excuse for this. This is great. I love doing these for a lot of different reasons, but there are benefits to the in-between session things when you're sitting in a hallway talking to somebody. Like I have great conversations every time I see Ben in person. None of that stuff's ever recorded. In fact, it always fails to record whenever we try it. Every single time.
Well, if I can share, so I did a webinar for a client earlier today, and there's one slide. It's all public information out there, but Microsoft just did their second work trend index study, and it's worth going and taking a look for. And I've got the link here, and I'll actually I'll grab this link after I read through, but it's really fascinating to look through the data, and it's more about and I've talked for a long time, and many of us have. There's the technology side of collaboration, there's the process side of collaboration, and then there's the people side of collaboration. And we tend to all focus on the technology because it's actually the easiest to go and solve problems. Process things are messier, people are the messiest. And a lot of IT people, we would love to not deal with the people side of things and just talk about process or technology. But the work trend index goes in and is looking a lot of that. And some of the results, the analysis coming out of it, were like the fact that remote meeting fatigue is real. It's a real thing, that people are getting burnout if they're not properly, as we were talking about earlier, separating work from life. They'll experience burnout. Remote collaboration is hard for those of us that have been collaborating, that have been remote employees. I mean, there are projects that I ran, that I owned, and when I was in Seattle and my team was in Boston and LA and London and Sydney, Australia, and they're all with other people and headquarters in Boston having discussions and be like, you never updated the SharePoint site. You never sent me an email to let me know it's my project. And I would constantly have to chase people to stay in the loop. That's one thing I'd like to think is changing about this, that everybody's getting a sampling of what it's like. This is a great example, I think. If you've ever driven a motorcycle, like commuted on it, like actually like ridden it as your primary vehicle for a while, when you get back into driving a car, you are more sensitive to motorcycles. You're more aware of them. You see them or others. And it's dangerous. Most accidents of motorcycles are because most drivers are not trained for that. They're not looking for them. They're not looking down those sight lines for the bikes. I believe that this experience, if everything goes back to normal, whatever that is in the future, people will become more aware of geographically dispersed team members. I really believe that we're all collectively going to get better at doing this. And that's been one huge positive of this experience.
You know what else nobody's sensitive to anymore? Kids screaming in the background of a conference call.
Yes.
Or dogs barking, or
yes.
Or you know what? Or losing an internet connection and then coming right back on. I remember I had somebody that was on a webinar and I lost the connection. It's like, it wasn't me. It was, act of God stuff. And they beat me up in the comments. I'm like, yeah, I flicked a switch. I did it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beat me up.
Yeah. So there have been some conversations too in the chat about some of that, like more dealing with the technology of working from home in terms of what about like call centers where you need to have a good phone system or a quality phone system that would move with you if your whole call center is working remotely from different places. Or like you said, Christian, I saw one person saying that they've maxed out all the available bandwidth at their house where they work from. So some of that has been interesting too, in terms of kind of going back to going into the office or seeing people or where you work from, is there also are some very real physical or technological challenges that people are still going to have too with working from home, where you may have to go into an office or continue to work from an office. And you mentioned that as well, Nick. So there's a lot of other interesting things with the technology when it comes to where you work.
Yep. Yeah, that's another thing. And someone's like, well, who covers the cost of that? Because that isn't always cheap, right? You're saying, oh, we'll go out, buy a couple $100 microphone and a webcam if you can find one, and spend $1,000 on your office right now and you're good to go. Not everyone's got $1,000 to throw in their office. Maybe their orgs could cover it. That's going to depend on your org. I know somebody who he just moved. They covered his entire, they covered just tons of money to move him and gave him an office full of stuff. Not everyone's going to do that. I don't know what the solution is there. It's going to be.
That's a good deal when you can get it, though, Nick.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've never had that. They're like, you will live outside and have whatever internet you have.
But that's always a caveat. I mean, it's not going to fit every organization, and there's going to be different needs. And as we were talking about earlier, is there's some roles. And Maarten, you were actually talking about that. There are some roles we're not going to go back into our manufacturing job, but I'll do my piece from my garage, and then someone come and pick that up, and you work on your piece. I mean, obviously, it doesn't fit every scenario. It's like any business process redesign. Do what makes sense where there could be efficiencies, and improve where it can be improved.
So what you're saying is
the positive side of all the bad things that happened is that we did push the limits in many roles that weren't sure if it was possible, and now they know it is or it isn't. So that's good. It's like my next door neighbor, he was traveling all across the world to do inspections, to provide certifications, and now he's doing that remotely. And now they plan to only do 20% of all the flights in the future. Well, that's only because they were pushed to not fly and just do it remotely with smartphones in Africa and Indonesia. People with a smartphone are looking at something and he's doing inspections and asking questions, right? That's perfect.
Well, so I have a good friend whose job was flying all over the world, and he went to some interesting backwater locations to inspect paper mills. Like that, and there's some degree of automation that's certainly happening so that you get real-time data about what's happening in a lot of these. But I mean, he was going he went to somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the Ukraine, where there were not going to be any processes to go in and automate and add IoT devices for real-time capture of that data. It was the good old-fashioned walkthrough with somebody who knows what they're doing to inspect. And that kind of thing. So there's, some degree that you're able to go and do. Again, you can travel a lot less if there's that kind of, automation in place. But sometimes you're just not going to be able to replace the face-to-face experiences.
So what all of this really boils down to with all these different scenarios is it depends.
Yes. There you go. And you've now learned the secret of being a consultant, that is the correct answer for any question.
Why is it that I never got a T-shirt out of all these years that just says "It depends"?
I got a sticker.
I have one.
I've seen
have a
stickers,
SharePoint,
but
I have a SharePoint toast one. I think I can't remember. It was from SharePoint conference 2000 something, 2011 maybe. I think I have a shirt that says "It depends" on the front.
I'll put that one. Oh, by the way, I'll get the SharePoint keychains now.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
The SharePoint keychain. Oh, that's great. But it depends. It's sure. So there's different roles. There's different categories of organizations. But we were pushed into adoption. So I have customers that now say, so we needed to make this change. We needed to change our work routines. We still have employees having a very bad effort in adopting to change. So we still need those trainers. The amount of training that has been given this year, from my perspective, it's huge. It's good that people were being taught to learn more in using Teams and using these digital meetings. So the average knowledge, like the maturity level of the average digital worker has increased at a higher pace. So I would say there is also a boost in knowledge that happened this year, which is a good thing. But still, there will always be exceptions, and some are required because you need to touch base. You need to see your coworkers from time to time. You need to get out of your basement. But it's also because, we need to find where it's useful and where it's not. I think that's the possible thing. We've seen more options here. Are we going to do some questions?
We have them. A lot of them were based around what we were just talking about. Just locations. Are they going to go back to it? And the answer is no. There probably isn't going to be the old normal after this. It's probably going to be the new normal, which is some sort of hybrid, right? Like we're saying, and it's going to depend on your job.
And I think we continue pushing. So we started rolling, and I think it's also our job as IT people to help people become aware and look at the process part of it and the people part of this change, and take it to the next level, basically. So we boosted the level of maturity on average, and we need to now. This will make it maybe more easier to go to the next one. So
there's a good question in here. Not so much a question as a comment. But now that we're doing this, what about devices? Right, the devices are going to be spread out more. How does IT manage that? Do they provide devices, or is this a BYOD situation now? What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I have many thoughts on this one. Let me do my minds quickly. It's taken a while before Microsoft added the right ingredients when we're looking at the information protection labels, like sensitivity labels, and the ability to apply policies on bring your own devices. And there's still gaps, by the way. If you have a Mac, the only way to really stop users from syncing files to their OneDrive clients, you need to use the cloud cloud app security package to be able to do so. And these require additional licensing. So the key thing is, of course, that many people working from home, people can sync files if you don't stop them by policies from a team site or from a SharePoint team site or from a Microsoft team to their local machine, and their local machine can be part of a zombie network. So that's still something you need to be very much aware of and use the technology you have available, or probably even push your management to buy additional licenses to make sure that stuff is protected.
Yeah, exactly. And they also mentioned, what about the required devices that a user might not own? Copiers and things like that. That's a whole other can of worms. I don't have room for a copier in my office. I don't want somebody sending me one of those. But what about the people who make copies for a living, right?
What? But that involves paper.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like using paper at all. I think it's for ancient Egyptians, but here we are.
I still have clients that need to fax. I have some that, it's.
But it is what it is. Yeah, my wife works in healthcare. There's still a lot of faxing that goes on there as well.
That's where this client is. This client's a healthcare client, and for whatever reason, lots of paper and faxes yet.
Well, I think that's kind of going back to a point I made earlier. I think that's where a lot of the shift will be. A lot of those, for the people those roles that it's required that they be in an office or coordinating, collaborating with other people face to face. What's going to change is then the systems that we use in Microsoft 365 and Teams being an important tool for a lot of us to keep everyone in contact with those people that are virtual. And so, we may be on site and there may be 5 people in that conference room, and there might be 10 people that are dialed into that. And I think that's going to become the norm, where for every one of those meetings, it'll be, it's the Jedi Council. Well, some of them will hologram in, and for those that are there, they get donuts. So there's that. There's balance. Because there's balance, there's good and evil, there's light and dark, there's donuts and there's non-donuts. So.
The balance in the force is being provided by eating donuts, and that's good.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I do like the example.
Mail. So we got a couple of them that are coming up that I don't know that we can really address on this call. These are probably call a lawyer answers. Some of them are talking about having some unionized workers, which is not super common in a lot of the industries I work in. But dealing with, they get to work from home and I don't. Well, that's a political question more so than a technology question. I don't know that there's a right answer to that. I think it depends. Maarten, you might have better opinions on that. You live in Europe where unions are more common. What kind of things are you seeing there?
Regarding which topic being?
They're talking about some of their workforce is unionized, and they're having trouble deciding, well, who gets to work from home? Because unions, at least here, you get perks based off of seniority a lot of the times, and they're like, oh, well, you're at whatever level, you get to work from home, but you just started. Go into the factory.
Well, here in the Netherlands, I haven't heard anything specific to unions on this topic. It already was pretty open, and it would actually be seen as a benefit, I would say, the ability to be working from home. So unions don't have an issue here. It's more that the traditional thinking organizations, the conservative organizations, and the management that's now being pushed to see that productivity might even be at a yearly height due to the working from home, and they get different viewpoints on the benefits of working from home. So it's where the employers, I think, that we're holding this back, and not so much the unions.
I think that is a good point. It's one of those growing pain things. Now there's more opportunity for that to happen, and there's going to be challenges along the way around that. And the other person had a similar question about hourly versus salaried workers, right? It's the same kind of situation. Salaried workers, most people in like the IT field, many of them are salaried, and you work when you work, and it's fine as long as your deliverables are met. But hourly people are going to have to clock in, and you're going to have to find some sort of a solution for that. That's especially they're talking about California labor laws, which is way out of the scope of anybody on this call. Consult a lawyer probably on that one.
But it's been happening for a while that we're working from hours to outcomes. That's already going on for decades, and so I think that's just continuing to be more mature.
Yep.
Yeah, I've also heard people, though, going back to the union question, I've actually heard some people ask that the other way, though, too, is there are legitimately some people that love going into the office. They love having that interaction, especially more of the extroverts, the people that get their energy from interacting with other people, asking, why do they get to go into the office and I have to stay home and work when I want to be in the office working? So I think a lot of people go into this too, seeing as one is maybe a perk or not a perk. I don't know that necessarily one is good or one is bad. Some of it depends on personalities, situations where I think either one can be seen as a benefit.
There's a big difference if you're like a 20-year-old living alone or you have a full family, and there's a big difference in being at home and how much disconnected you are from other people.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
As an empty nester, man, I want to get out and see people.
See, and I'm the opposite. I have 4 all under 8, and I want to get out so I can work someplace where it's quiet.
Yeah.
True. So here's another "it depends" rule. We can all put this in a flow diagram with decision tree.
Yeah.
If you need to work from home or not.
It depends.
Yeah.
So do any of you, a lot of people have been giving predictions for what's going to happen over the next year too. Do any of you guys have predictions in terms of technology or work from home, or I saw one that we're going to continue to eat more food because everybody's working from home and just lives in the kitchen while they work.
Is it before or after the asteroid?
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Asteroid monsters, if you're hearing me, I'm on your side. It's fine. That's a good question. I think, like we said, I don't think there's going to be an old normal anymore. I think we're going to evolve in how we work, and maybe even what jobs there are from here, right? I'm seeing, we're talking about brick and mortar. Some of my clients are retail, and they're shutting their locations down. A lot of them, and that's both unfortunate and an opportunity, in that they're going to have to pivot somehow, right?
Yeah. That's actually the great point. There's an article I saw that made kind of national news, but it was out of like a Seattle area newspaper, was talking about, with Microsoft's announcement that some roles would permanently work from home, and that they're kind of shifting their thinking about corporate real estate. This author, and I apologize, I don't remember where it was, but you probably saw something similar. But was concerned about what this would do to all the supporting services, restaurants and cafes, if Microsoft now, or any large company that helps. I mean, it really comes down to a handful of companies that have the major the workforces in some of these areas like Bellevue, Redmond, Washington, and if a bunch of them decide to, hey, we'll just hire people and have them work remote from wherever they are in the world, what does that do to the infrastructure of all of those other services? And that's one way to look at it. And of course, and my thought was, well, if there's more and more people, and maybe you've seen a lot of the news about companies moving out, like I talked about HP, but moving out of the Silicon Valley, and these companies that are realizing we don't need to be headquartered there, but also we can hire the right person wherever they are and plug them in and collaborate into this new work culture. Again, mostly information workers, and it's going to, there will be an effective then distributing that out, where I might go down and buy groceries or eat lunch at that restaurant if I'm forced to work near campus or on campus for a major company, and instead those dollars go to my small town. I'm just stay home. I'm still here. So I think that there will be a balance of that trend. We don't know the full effects of what that'll do. It'll impact a lot of these much more dense urban areas and give people the benefits of living kind of wherever they are happiest. So I think it's a good thing, but there's going to be growing pains to get there.
Yeah, I think our industry in particular, I think, realized this a long time ago, that you can get top talent if you don't require somebody to move to come work for you. They're like, oh yeah, sure, here's a good package. Great, I live in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. I would love to take some California dollars, and it's a done deal instantly. You can't do that when they require moving. Maarten, what about you?
Well, the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that I'm expecting is the impact that software is bringing to hardware. So to give you an example, like 20 years ago, when you wanted to be a DJ, you had to pay 3,000 euros or dollars in turntables and a mixer, and then you could start like how to DJ. If you look now, due to the push of the success of being a DJ and stuff, you can like get this 150 euro thing, which is connected to USB, and you can connect it to your iPhone or whatever, and you can start learning to DJ. So that, due to the software on the phone and the fact that you already have this powerful PC on your phone, the powerful CPU, the same is happening with Teams. So we used to have many of these very expensive meeting rooms with stuff from Cisco and other suppliers, which were like 20,000 euros or dollars. And what I'm seeing is customers are replacing those rooms, or at least extending those rooms, with cheaper technology from Lenovo, from Logitech. And I'm very curious about the sales numbers of Logitech, for example. So these devices are going to put everywhere in office spaces, and these things are also coming to our homes. And of course, Teams is putting new technology in here. Some of us are using like OBS, right, to do cool stuff with changing in backgrounds, but all that stuff is coming into Teams. So Teams is becoming a professional studio, which allows people to be more creative in doing these meetings and webinars and live events. So there will be impact there. The software that Teams is providing to do these calls, webinars, live events, and the cheap hardware, or the way that we can use our mobile phones to extend that, I'm very curious what that will look like in 2021.
Wait, I'm stuck on a point that, wait, Maarten, you're not in a super nice office with 4 windows?
He's in outer space.
Correct. Yeah, sorry for that disillusion.
If you back up,
don't look at the man behind the curtain.
if you start backing up, you just kind of fade into the background, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, you do pretty good. It's that green screen behind you that helps, isn't it?
Yeah, Teams isn't quite there as well. Like I can't do the Teams because it like blocks my laptop out and it like everything. Oh, nice. Sounds like we need to have a GlobalCon4 jam at some point. Yeah. What do you think, Ben? What kind of predictions do you have as far as whatever we were just talking about goes?
It's fine. I asked it first so I could think about it because I don't know. Can I say I joked before this that if anybody told me their prediction was Yammer would go away, that they would win the prize? I'm not going to predict that. People have been predicting that Yammer is going to go away for years.
Yeah, but with that was email was going to go away as well, and
right.
The numbers are insane for continued email growth. That was part of my presentation. If there's for people that just think it was like, well, I rarely use email anymore. I mean, the numbers around it are just insane. Hang on, I'm going to pull up my slide and all.
You're going to pull it up. I'm trying to think, like, what do I see?
3.9 billion people on the planet are using email. That's half the planet. 294 billion emails are sent daily. How many are read or deleted instantly? That's a different question. But let's see. They're saying that it's increasing by 13 billion emails yearly, and it should be 347 billion by 2023. And this coming from Radicati and Statista. The average office worker 121 emails a day, and there's emails are hitting the send button 3.5 million times a second.
That is ridiculous.
And it's just increasing. And
email going away.
And we're doing video and we're doing social. So that's given the rise of these other solutions. If we didn't have social and meetings and all these other things, we'd have 4 times that in email.
Yeah.
But with those things, it's not displaced it. It's still growing.
That brings up a good point. Is we are going to need an increase in bandwidth and storage.
Well,
it's been going up, but so go ahead, Ben.
That's one thing I was going to think of. As I was sitting here, and you look at like what SpaceX is doing with Starlink in terms of doing the satellite internet, and some of the other people that were chatting about limited bandwidth at their house is, you also see over the course of the last 6 months, at least here in the U.S., Comcast and AT&T are the big internet providers. I think you're going to see a lot of changes. And I don't necessarily know what they're going to be. If it's going to be some of the major internet providers increasing their bandwidth, or if it's going to be some of the new things like satellite internet popping up. But to what you were just saying, Nick, I think there's going to have to be a lot more shift of a greater availability of high bandwidth networks across the U.S. As kind of like Christian was saying, as people start to distribute to various areas, you're seeing loads on networks that didn't have them before. You're seeing a lot more bandwidth coming out of residential areas because of everybody working from home. And I think that's going to continue. So I'm going to be really curious to watch internet providers and those network connections over the next 12 months and how that's actually that infrastructure is going to evolve out of all of this.
And you have G5 coming online, which, as everyone knows, also automatically vaccinates your children. So it does everything. And it overturns governments, vaccinates your children, and provides blazing fast internet. So
I got
my you have line of sight, because it really doesn't work as well, right? Because it's a little bit flakier.
Yeah. So we're running pretty low on time. We've got about 5 minutes left. There was one more question I think we can answer quickly, and then we need to pick a winner for best prediction. And that was, do you think working at home for a long period makes you more introverted?
Oh.
I'm going to say no. Being a consultant has made me more extroverted, regardless of where I've worked from. Oh, that's a pretty awesome clippy thing.
Yes.
What do you guys think?
I say yes. So
I don't know. And here's where I go with that. Like you said, it made you more extroverted, Nick.
It depends.
Regardless.
Well, it is. So it's the
Yeah.
it depends. But I feel like there's also a lot of a misconception sometimes of the difference between an introvert and an extrovert. Like I tend to fall in the range of where I'm like an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert, where an extrovert isn't necessarily someone that wants to be on stage all the time, but an extrovert is someone that gets their energy from being around people, right? So you can have an extrovert that doesn't want to be the center of attention, but still gets their energy and doesn't get exhausted by being around lots of people. So does being a consultant really make you an extrovert, or does it just make you voice your opinions a little bit quicker? And frankly, I don't know how working from home does. I would probably tend to agree with Christian that I think it does, because those people that are extroverts maybe have to start figuring out how to stay motivated and how to get energy without being around people as much. I don't know. That's an interesting question.
See, and the reason I just said yes, rather, because so myself, I'm a very extroverted person. I get energy by collaborating, interacting with people. I feed off of the energy of others. I'm a vampire. That's what I am. My wife is a classic introvert. And I could see it. Like, she physically gets drained. She go to some family outing, and she gets home. She's like, have to have it quiet. I need to go take a nap just to re-energize, be alone, and would rather it's like, hey, let's go and do something with the extended family. It's like, no, I just want to stay at home and do nothing all day, kind of thing. But that kind of classic thing. But I think that to some degree, obviously it depends on personality types and how you're interacting. I do a lot to try to interact with other people, virtually as well as physically in the real world here, to try and harness as much of that interactive energy, because I know myself and what I need to stay positive and productive. So I just think that people that are introverted love it, working from home. People that are extroverted, I think it does cause them to retract. So
from that point, though, do you think sometimes it's harmful to the introverts? Being that because you're introverted, if you don't like to deal with people, you're going to be less likely to pick up the phone. You're going to be less likely to turn on your camera. And while that's where you get your energy from, we also talked earlier about some of that importance of the physical interaction, whether you be introverted or extroverted. It's a little bit easier for those introverts to almost pull further back into their shell and not be forced into some of that physical interaction that may be good for them, even though they are introverts.
You actually have
about 2 minutes left, Martin. Sorry, go ahead, Martin.
Is in the actual workroom where you had the stand of the cubicles, like we discussed earlier, which is, and in the last 10 years, we had this open space happening here in the Netherlands. Everything had to be open space. And there are people who are hating that because they could not work in the open space and they always needed to get these own rooms. And that's maybe also connected being introvert or extrovert, or your ability to disconnect from the outside world when you try to work. There's
all right. That was no great point. And again, on the answers, it depends. So we only have about 1 minute left. We need to pick a winner for the best prediction. I made my vote, but if you guys want to look in the chat real quick and see if you have any other choices, and we'll announce real quickly that whoever we choose is going to get an all access pass for free.
Yeah,
we'll announce that in like a couple seconds.
I see yours.
Same thing, Nick. I agree. That's a good one.
Let's see what these guys say. Yeah, I like that one too.
Right, so we have two of them. Who's going to cast the deciding vote?
You want to flip a coin? I don't have a coin. I got a pin.
Actually, I lost weight in the last 6 months. I'm not eating more. I'm eating less.
I have also lost weight in the last 6 months. Man, what do you guys think? I say we flip a coin. I don't know well enough to make a good decision off of that. I'm just someone call it heads or tails.
Heads.
It is tails.
Okay.
Oh, so yours wins, Nick.
Yep. All right. So the winner was Adam B. I predict monthly costs for my Microsoft 365 users to increase because they're going to ask for more services.
Yes.
And David M., to fill it in, David M., you were a close contender. You were the runner-up with your Eat More comment.
Yeah.
If you didn't gather that from people talking about their weight loss or increase over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So, sorry, David, you lost out due to Christian picking the wrong side of the coin.
Yeah. So it goes. Anyway, that's all we have. We're about out of time. This is the end of the day, but there are at least one more day. I love that sticker. There's at least one more day. Does this go through Friday? I don't remember. One of you guys?
Yes, I saw 4 days on the schedule. I think there's 4 days.
Yeah, there is 4 days. I just didn't remember which day it started. It's been a long
It was Tuesday,
week.
I think. Tuesday through Friday. I don't know.
What's the day?
Today? Wednesday.
Wednesday. That's the other thing work from home has done to me. I can never remember what day it is. I told my wife today it was Tuesday, and she's like, no, it's Wednesday. I was like, no, it's Tuesday. And
I thought it was Thursday.
I was always reminded by the traffic.
Yeah.
Like how busy it is on the road. I know what day it is, but
Yeah.
I don't have that anymore.
From my basement, I don't have that perspective. My response is, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's all the same. It doesn't matter.
Awesome. And on that note, everyone, enjoy the rest of the conference. This was super fun. And until next time,
Right.
How to stop being live.
yes, I know we never know when we're not live, right? So we just keep talking until all of a sudden one of us gets cut off in mid-sentence.
Oh, yeah. No, we're still live. There's a little icon up here. I think Hugo has to do that.
Oh, yeah. We're still live, so we can keep talking.
We can't. Sorry, everybody who stuck around. You get our B-roll stuff now.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Yeah,
to talk about.
not that high quality stuff earlier.